Hi there, welcome to Sleep Stories Universe. You made it to the end of the day. Get comfortable, however your body wants to rest right now. Some nights, these journeys take us far out into the distance. Last time, we drifted all the way down to the deepest point on Earth, the floor of the Mariana Trench. Tonight, we stay in the deep, but we go looking for something else. Not how far down it goes, but what manages to live there. You don't need to remember anything tonight. You don't need to follow every detail. Just let the words carry you. Tonight's story is the deep sea, a world without light. Far beneath the surface, past the place where the last of the daylight fades, there is a wide, dark stretch of ocean the sun has never once reached, and yet it isn't empty. We'll move slowly, layer by layer, down into that darkness, and meet the things that live there. Some that glow with a soft light of their own, some that drift quietly through water that has never known a single ray of sun. And along the way, we'll stay honest about something simple. There are parts of this dark world that science has come to know well, and parts that remain quiet, still beyond our reach. And if you drift off somewhere along the way, that's perfectly fine. Let's begin. Somewhere far below the surface of the ocean, there are places so deep that sunlight has never reached them. Not dimly, not briefly, but never at all. And the strange thing is, even there, in water that has never known light, something is alive. The first question, where the sunlight ends. There is a question that has a way of arriving quietly, usually late, usually when the day has finally loosened its grip on you. It goes something like this. What is down there, in the deep ocean, where the light never reaches? Not the bright shallows where the water glows turquoise over sand. Not the gentle, pool blue water near the shore. Somewhere far below that, down where the surface is only a memory, and the water turns from blue to a deeper blue, and then to something that isn't really a color at all. Most of us have stood at the edge of the ocean at some point and looked out at it. And the part we can see, the surface, is enormous on its own. But the surface is only a skin. Beneath it lies the largest living space on our entire planet, and almost all of that space is dark. Tonight, we're going to drift down into it slowly, not to be frightened by it, and not to conquer it, but simply to understand a little more about the life that manages to exist there, in a world without sunlight. Let's take it one step at a time. Here's the simple version of why this is such an interesting question. Nearly everything you have ever eaten, and nearly every animal you have ever seen, depends in some way on the sun. A blade of grass takes in sunlight and turns it into food. A rabbit eats the grass. A fox eats the rabbit. Trace almost any meal backward, far enough, and you arrive at sunlight. This is the great quiet engine of life on the surface of the earth, the slow daily gift of light becoming leaf, leaf becoming body, body becoming soil, and around it goes again. We are so used to it that we rarely think about it. The sun comes up, things grow. That is simply how the world works. And then there's the deep sea, where that engine does not run. Sunlight, it turns out, doesn't travel very far through water. It feels like it should. On a clear day, the sea looks lit from within. But water absorbs light quickly, and it absorbs different colors at different speeds. The warm colors go first. Red disappears within the first several meters, then orange, then yellow, until what's left is mainly blue, the color that travels deepest through seawater. And even that blue fades, By around 1,000 meters down, even the faintest trace of sunlight has been swallowed completely. Below that depth, no light from the surface reaches at all. Scientists divide the ocean roughly this way: a sunlit upper layer, a dim twilight layer beneath it, where there's just enough glow to see by but not enough to grow by. And then, below about 1,000 meters, the dark zone, where for all practical purposes the sun has never shone. You don't have to hold on to those numbers. What matters most is the shape of the idea: a thin lit ceiling at the top, and beneath it, an immense volume of darkness. And here is the part people often find surprising. That dark volume is not a small leftover at the bottom. It is most of the ocean. The sunlit layer we know so well, the layer of coral and sea turtles and sunlight scattering through the shallows, is only a narrow band at the surface. The vast majority of the ocean's water lies below it, in permanent or near permanent darkness. The deep sea isn't the exception. By volume, the deep sea is the rule. The bright, warm, familiar ocean is the exception. So the question sharpens: if life on the surface runs on sunlight, and if most of the ocean has no sunlight at all, then what happens to life down there? Does it simply stop? For a long time, that's more or less what people assumed. The deep sea was imagined as a kind of cold desert, empty, still, a place where nothing much could live, because the one ingredient life seemed to require, light, was missing. That assumption turned out to be wrong. Beautifully, strangely wrong. Let's slow that down for a second, because it's worth sitting with. The deep ocean is cold. Below the sunlit layer, the temperature settles to only a few degrees above freezing, and it stays there, steady and chill, in the dark. The pressure grows heavier with every meter you descend, until it becomes greater than anything we experience in ordinary life. And there is no light to grow food by. By every measure that matters to a plant, the deep sea should be uninhabitable. There are, in fact, no plants down there at all. Without sunlight, photosynthesis can't happen, and so the green, growing things that cover the surface world simply have no place in the deep. And yet, life is there, not barely clinging on, not a few lonely stragglers, but a whole living world, layered through the darkness from top to bottom, all the way to the deepest trenches. There are animals down there that have never once encountered sunlight in their entire lives, and whose ancestors never did either, going back countless generations. There are creatures shaped in ways that seem almost invented, soft-bodied and slow, glowing and patient, built for a world we can barely imagine. The deep sea is not empty. It is one of the largest inhabited spaces on Earth, and we are only beginning to learn who lives there. One way to think about it is this. Imagine you were told about a country you had never visited, a country with no sun, no plants, bitterly cold, under enormous weight. You might reasonably expect it to be barren, and then imagine being shown that it was full of life anyway. Life that had quietly worked out its own ways of feeding, seeing, hiding, and finding one another in the dark, without any of the things you assumed life needed. That is roughly the situation. The rules we thought were universal turned out to be local. They applied to our sunlit corner of the world. The deep sea was playing by different rules all along. If your mind drifts a little here, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing you need to do with any of this except let it settle. You don't have to follow every turn. You don't have to remember a single thing. You can simply let the words move past you the way the water moves, slowly, without effort, while we drift further down together. It can help, before we go any deeper, just to breathe with the idea of that descent. The surface, bright and busy and warm, falling away above us. The water cooling, darkening by gentle degrees. No sudden drop, no jolt, only a slow and steady easing downward, the way you ease into rest at the end of a long day. The deep sea has no hurry in it, and neither do we. Wherever your attention rests tonight is exactly where it should be. So how does it work? How can there be life, real and abundant life, in a place with no sunlight to power it? That's the thread we'll follow tonight, softly, without rushing. And the answer, broadly, comes in two parts. The first part is that the deep sea, for the most part, lives on leftovers. Even though sunlight never reaches the depths, the products of sunlight do. Up in the bright surface waters, tiny drifting organisms grow in their countless billions, fed by the sun. They live and they die. And when they die, along with the waste and fragments and remains of everything else living up there, a slow, soft rain begins to fall. Bits of material drift downward through the water, sinking gradually into the dark. Scientists call it marine snow, because that's what it looks like. A quiet, endless snowfall sifting down from above. For a great many deep-sea animals, this drifting debris is the main thing on the menu. The surface world feeds the deep, indirectly, one slow-falling flake at a time. We'll spend more time with that idea soon. The second part is stranger, and it overturned what scientists believed about life itself. In certain places on the deep sea floor, life has found a way to feed without any connection to the sun at all, not even second-hand. Instead of light, it runs on chemistry, on energy pulled directly from the minerals and fluids seeping out of the earth. Around these places, whole communities thrive in the cold and the dark, fueled by a process that needs no sunlight whatsoever. When this was first discovered, it genuinely changed the way we understood where and how life can exist. But that too is a story for a little later. For now, it's enough to hold the simple shape of it. Life in the deep sea is not powered by sunlight directly. It's powered either by what drifts down from the sunlit world far above, or, in special places, by the chemistry of the earth itself. Two answers to one question, two engines, neither of them the sun. And once you accept that life is down there, a whole cascade of smaller questions opens up. The questions we'll wander through over the coming hours. How do you find food in a place where it's scarce and the dark is total? How do you see if there's nothing to see by? And is seeing even worth the trouble? Why do so many deep-sea creatures make their own light? And what are they saying with it? How do bodies survive pressure that would seem to be far too much to bear? And how do animals ever find one another to begin again in all that emptiness? These aren't trick questions, and we're not going to chase them in a hurry. The deep sea has been doing this for an unimaginably long time, quietly, without an audience. There's no rush in any of it. The marine snow falls at its own slow pace. The animals move slowly, conserving what little energy they can gather. Even the water itself moves gently down there, in long, patient currents. If there's a single feeling that matches the deep ocean, it might be that one, unhurried, steady, calm. A place where nothing needs to happen quickly, and nothing does. It can help to picture where we're actually going, just loosely. Think of the ocean as a tall building, and we're going to take the slowest elevator imaginable down through its floors. Near the top, the lobby. Everything is bright and warm and busy with life. The part of the ocean shown in every nature film, full of color and motion. As we descend, the light begins to dim. The colors leave the water one by one. The crowd thins. By the time we pass below that 1,000-meter mark, the windows have gone fully black, and we've entered the part of the building that almost no one ever visits, the part that makes up most of the structure. We're not going to rush past it. We'll keep easing downward floor by floor into the long dark layers where life still finds a way to exist, not to reach the very bottom, but to meet the world that lives in between, in all that quiet darkness. But we begin, as everything down there must, at the boundary, the place where the light gives out. Because to understand the creatures of the deep, you first have to understand the one thing that defines every moment of their lives, the thing they have organized their entire existence around. Not cold, not pressure. Those matter, and we'll come to them. The thing that shapes them most is the absence of the sun. So let's begin where the sunlight ends and follow the water down, where the ocean turns black. Right at the surface, the water is full of light. On a bright day, the top of the sea is almost dazzling, light scattering off every ripple, pouring down through the upper water in shifting columns. This is the layer we know. It's warm, or warm enough. It's bright, and it's where the great majority of familiar ocean life makes its home. Because this is the one part of the sea with enough light, not just to see by, but to live by, in the deepest sense, the part where sunlight can actually be turned into food, and is thinner than it feels. We picture the ocean as a vast blue world, and it is, but this food-growing skin reaches down only a couple of 100 meters in clear water, often much less where the water is clouded with life or sediment. The lush, productive, brightly lit sea, the one we imagine when we think of the ocean, is a shallow film stretched over something far larger and far darker. And the moment we sink past it, that film begins to give way. The change is gradual. The light doesn't switch off. It thins, and it thins unevenly, the warmth leaving the water first. The reds go, then the oranges, then the yellows, drained away one by one until only blue is left, the single color that reaches this far down. If you were descending slowly here, you'd watch the world around you lose its warmth and settle into a deepening blue-gray, dim and cool and strange, like a long evening that keeps getting later but never quite becomes night. This middle stretch has a fitting name. It's often called the twilight zone. There's still light, but only a little, and only the blue end of it, enough to make out a shape, enough for a sharp-eyed animal to catch a silhouette drifting overhead, but nowhere near enough to grow a single thing. The light here is for seeing, not for living off. It's a halfway place, neither the bright surface nor the true dark below, a long dim corridor between two worlds, and the twilight is anything but empty. It may hold an extraordinary quantity of fish, possibly more by weight than the rest of the open ocean combined, though that's an estimate rather than a settled count. What's remarkable is what they do with the darkness. Every evening, as the surface dims, a vast crowd of these creatures rises, swimming up out of the gloom toward the shallower water to feed under the cover of night, when the hunters of the bright surface can't easily see them. And every morning, as the light returns, they sink back down again, slipping into the dimness to wait out the dangerous, well-lit hours. It's a daily gamble, climbing up toward the food and the danger together, then retreating back down into the dark where it's safe. It happens on an almost unimaginable scale, across the whole ocean, every single night, a slow daily tide of life moving up into the dark and back down again. It is, quietly, one of the largest movements of living things anywhere on Earth, and almost no one ever sees it. For a long time, no one knew it was happening at all. When ships first began measuring the sea with sound, sending a pulse downward and timing its echo, they kept finding a strange second bottom, a soft, shifting floor hanging far above the real one. It would climb toward the surface at dusk and sink again at dawn, as if the seabed itself were quietly breathing. It took years to understand. There was no false floor. The echoes were bouncing off the bodies of countless small animals, a living layer so dense it could fool a machine into reading it as solid ground, rising and falling with the light. The deep had been holding a vast crowd in plain sight, and we only found it by listening. The twilight zone isn't a dead corridor we pass through. It's a busy, breathing layer, organized entirely around the rhythm of a light that barely reaches it. And then, as we keep descending, even that last blue glow gives out. Somewhere around 1,000 meters down, the final traces of sunlight are gone. Not faint, not nearly gone. Gone. From here, the ocean has a different name. The lit water above is the photic zone, the part the sun can touch. Everything below is the aphotic zone, a word that simply means without light. It's a quiet, technical word for an enormous and absolute fact. From here down, there is no day. There is no night. There is only the dark, unbroken and permanent, all the way to the seafloor. Let that settle for a moment. We're so shaped by sunlight that it's genuinely hard to picture a place where it has no presence at all. Up here, even our darkest nights aren't truly dark. There's moonlight, starlight, the glow of distant cities, the certainty that the sun will come back in a few hours. Down there, none of that exists. No dawn is coming, no dim horizon. An animal in the aphotic zone could live its whole life from beginning to end, and so could every ancestor behind it, without once meeting a single ray of sunlight. The dark there isn't an event. It isn't a time of day. It's simply the condition of the world, the way the open sky is the condition of ours. And the boundary we just crossed, that line around 1,000 meters where the light fails, isn't a wall. There's no door, no curtain drawn. It's more like the way a long dusk fades imperceptibly into true night, so slowly you can't name the moment it happened. One stretch of water is merely dim. A little deeper, it's darker still. A little deeper than that, the darkness becomes total. The creatures spread across these depths live that gradient as the basic geography of their world, dimmer above, darker below, and they've arranged themselves along it with great care, some keeping to the faint blue twilight, others settling into the absolute black beneath, each at home in its own measure of dark. It's worth holding on to too, how steady this dark world is. Up at the surface, conditions never stop shifting, day into night, season into season, warm into cold, calm into storm. The deep is far more constant. Below the sunlit layer, the temperature drops to just a few degrees above freezing, and then simply stays there, cold and even, year after year. In the midnight depths, the water holds at around 4 degrees Celsius, close to the temperature inside a refrigerator, and it barely moves from that. There are no seasons in any way we'd recognize. No warmth of summer reaching down, no chill of winter, because the sun that drives all of that never arrives. It is one of the most stable places on the entire planet, cold and dark and quiet, holding much the same conditions across spans of time that are hard to even hold in mind. One way to think of it is that the deep sea sits almost outside of weather and almost outside of time as we feel it. The dramas of the surface, the storms, the bright mornings, the turning skies, simply don't reach down. What reaches down instead is something much gentler and much slower. And there's a strange comfort in imagining a place so steady. Up here, everything is always changing. The light, the temperature, the seasons folding one into the next, the constant small adjustments of a world that never quite holds still. Down there, almost none of it arrives. The cold stays cold, the dark stays dark. 1 hour is much like the last, and 1 century, in its broad strokes, much like the one before it. For a creature of the deep, there is no waiting for morning, because morning never comes, and no bracing for winter, because winter never arrives. There is only the long, even constancy of the deep, holding the same quiet conditions across stretches of time we can scarcely take in. A place of rest, in a sense, on the largest possible scale. But constancy is not the same as comfort, and stillness is not the same as ease, because in all that steady dark, the animals living there still face the oldest problem there is. They have to eat. Every one of them, down to the smallest, needs energy to go on living, and they need it here, in the cold and the black, with the sun forever out of reach. And here is the difficulty that shapes everything below the light. Up in that thin, bright skin at the top, food begins with the sun, sunlight caught and turned into living matter that feeds everything else in turn. But we've sunk well below the last of the light now, into water where nothing can grow, where there are no green meadows and nothing to graze, where the engine that powers life almost everywhere else simply does not turn. The creatures of the deep can't make their own food, and there's nothing growing down here for them to eat, so their meals can't begin where they live. Whatever feeds this entire dark world has to come from somewhere else. And if you held still in that blackness and waited and watched, you would slowly begin to notice it. Something is moving in the dark, not a current, not a creature. Something finer than that, drifting down past you, soft and slow and almost weightless, falling steadily out of the lit world far above and sinking on into the deep. Look closely, and it resolves into countless tiny flecks, pale against the black, drifting down at their own unhurried pace. Some fall straight and steady, some turns and tumbles as it goes, taking its slow time. None of it is in any rush, and all of it is heading the same way, down toward the animals waiting below. It has been falling the whole time, the entire while we've been descending. And for a great many of the creatures down here, it is everything. That slow, endless fall is where we go next, the slow fall from above. Let's start with the gentlest answer, the one that's falling around us even now, all through the dark ocean, quietly, endlessly. It's called marine snow, and it's almost exactly what it sounds like. Far above, in the bright surface waters, life is busy. Tiny drifting organisms grow there in unfathomable numbers, fed by the sun. the floating microscopic life that forms the base of nearly everything in the ocean. They live their brief lives near the light, and then they die. And they aren't alone in this. Everything up there eventually contributes. The remains of small creatures, the waste they leave behind, fragments and scraps and bits of living matter of every kind. All of it, once it's no longer held up by life, begins to do the only thing it can. It sinks, and as it sinks, it drifts down through the water in soft, pale flakes, slowly, softly, catching the faint light on its way through the upper layers and then continuing on into the dark. From below, or from the side, it genuinely looks like snowfall, a steady, downward drift of small white particles sifting through the water without any hurry at all. That's why scientists named it marine snow. It's one of those rare cases where the technical term is also a perfectly lovely description of the thing itself. A slow snow that never lands on anything warm, falling through water instead of air, drifting down out of the sunlit world into the lightless one beneath. Here's the simple version of why this matters so much. Marine snow is, for an enormous number of deep-sea animals, the main source of food. The sun can't reach the deep, but the products of the sun can. Up at the surface, sunlight becomes living matter. That living matter eventually dies and falls, and on its way down, it carries the sun's energy with it, repackaged into something an animal in the dark can eat. The deep sea, in a very real sense, is fed by the surface. It lives on what drifts down from above. Every flake of marine snow is a small parcel of sunlight, delivered slowly into a place the sun itself can never go. Let's slow that down, because it's a beautiful piece of how the world fits together. The brightness at the top and the darkness at the bottom aren't really two separate worlds. They're connected, joined by this constant soft falling. The lit ocean is the kitchen. The dark ocean is fed from it, plate after plate drifting down. There's something quietly moving in that idea, that the sunniest part of the sea is always, without a sound, feeding the part that has never seen the sun. And it's worth letting yourself picture it for a moment, simply, as an image to rest in. The dark water all around, cool and still. And through it, drifting down past you, those soft pale flakes, unhurried, uncountable, catching no light because there is no light to catch, yet falling all the same, the way snow falls through a quiet night when no one is watching. It does not stop. It has been falling like this, somewhere in the deep, for longer than we can meaningfully imagine, and it is falling now quietly as you rest. A slow and endless snow in a place where it never grows cold enough to matter and never lands anywhere warm. The journey itself is long and slow. A flake of marine snow doesn't plummet. It drifts, taking its time, and the trip from the surface down into the deep ocean can take many days, sometimes weeks. As the particles sink, they tend to bump into one another and stick together, gathering into larger flakes as they go, which makes them heavier, which lets them sink a little faster. But it's still a patient descent, measured in the kind of time the deep sea seems to run on. Some of the snow is intercepted and eaten on the way down in the twilight zone, before it ever reaches the bottom. The rest continues on, into the dark, where animals are waiting for it. And waiting is often exactly the word, because here's the difficulty. Marine snow is food, yes, but it's thin food and unreliable food. It doesn't fall evenly. Some stretches of the deep sea see a fairly steady drift. Others go through long, lean spells, where very little comes down at all. How much snow falls depends on what's happening far above, how much life there is at the surface in a given season, how much gets eaten or breaks apart on the way down, which way the currents are carrying things. From the perspective of an animal in the dark, the food supply is faint, scattered, and never guaranteed. You can't count on a meal arriving when you'd like one to. This single fact, food is scarce, shapes deep sea life more than almost anything else, except the darkness itself. And the animals down there have responded to it in a way that's both simple and profound. They've slowed down. One way to think about it is abundance against scarcity. Up at the surface, energy is everywhere, and life can afford to be fast and busy, fish darting, predators chasing, everything in motion, a kind of careless plenty. Down in the deep, energy is precious and rare, and life cannot afford to waste a scrap of it. So many deep-sea animals live at a much slower pace. They move little, they grow slowly, their bodies run on remarkably low energy, the way you might turn the heat down low in a house to make a small amount of fuel last through a long, cold season. A great many deep-sea creatures spend much of their lives simply being still, conserving, waiting, drifting, doing as little as possible until food or opportunity actually arrives. It's not laziness, it's strategy. In a world this lean, stillness is survival, and their bodies often match that economy. Down in the dark, a lot of deep-sea animals have soft, squishy, almost gelatinous bodies and slick or slimy skin. Building a hard, heavy, muscular body the way many surface animals do, takes a great deal of food and energy the deep simply can't spare. A soft, watery body is cheaper to build and cheaper to maintain. It's another way of getting by on very little. So while it might seem strange to us that so many creatures of the deep are soft and slow and delicate, it makes perfect sense once you understand the world they're solving for. They're built for famine, not feast. Now, marine snow isn't the only thing that falls. Every so often, something much larger comes down. A big animal from the surface waters dies, a large fish, or now and then something far bigger, and its body sinks all the way to the deep sea floor. And for the creatures of the deep, a large fall of food like this is an extraordinary event. Where marine snow is a thin, steady drizzle, a big carcass arriving on the bottom is a sudden banquet, an enormous concentration of food appearing all at once in a place where food is usually so sparse. When a great body settles onto the sea floor, the deep responds. Scavengers find it, sometimes remarkably quickly, drawn through the dark by scent carried on the slow currents. Hagfish, certain deep-sea sharks, eel-like fish, and other animals gather to feed, arriving from the surrounding darkness to take their share. Over time, the feast passes through stages, larger scavengers first, stripping away what they can, and then smaller and smaller creatures, worms and crustaceans and others, working over what's left, breaking it down, until eventually even the bones and the enriched patch of seafloor around them are supporting their own small specialized communities. A single large fall can nourish life on that patch of the deep sea floor for a very long time, an unexpected island of plenty in a wide, lean dark. It's one of the more striking demonstrations of how deeply the surface and the deep are tied together, how the living and dying far above keep on feeding the world far below. So that's the broad shape of how most of the deep sea eats. A constant faint snowfall of small particles, sunlight repackaged and delivered slowly into the dark, supplemented now and then by the rare arrival of something larger. It's a food web that hangs almost entirely from the sunlit surface far overhead, connected to it by that long, patient fall. And it's lean enough that it has shaped the animals themselves, made them slow, soft, patient, and careful with every bit of energy they manage to gather. Here's a thought worth sitting with for a moment, gently. Imagine you're one of these animals. You live in cold, permanent darkness. Your food is scarce and scattered, drifting down unpredictably from somewhere far above, or arriving all at once in a rare windfall you'd very much like to reach before anyone else does. You can't see the sun. In the deepest dark, you can't really see at all, not the way we mean it. And yet, you have to find that food. You have to locate a faint drifting flake or sense a distant fall of something larger and make your way to it through the black, all while spending as little precious energy as possible. How would you even do it? How do you find anything in a place with no light to find it by? Reading the dark. It's tempting to assume that in total darkness, eyes would simply be useless, and that the creatures of the deep must get by without them entirely. But the truth is more interesting than that, and it splits, in a way, into two answers. Some deep-sea animals do rely on vision, just not the kind we have, and many lean on senses that have very little to do with light at all. To live in the dark, the deep sea didn't abandon perception, it rebuilt it. Let's begin with the eyes, because what's happened to them down there is genuinely remarkable. In the dim twilight zone, where a faint blue glow still filters down, eyes are very much worth having, and evolution has pushed them to extraordinary extremes of sensitivity. The problem an animal faces there isn't quite total darkness. It's that there's almost no light, just the faintest trace, and catching even a little of it could mean the difference between spotting a meal and missing it, or noticing a shadow overhead before it notices you. So the eyes of many deep-sea fish have become exquisitely good at gathering the smallest amounts of light. Where our eyes are built for a bright, colourful world, theirs are built to wring every last usable scrap of brightness out of near blackness. Some have taken this to striking lengths. There are fish in the deep with eyes shaped into tubes, pointing not forward but upward, toward the faint glow drifting down from far above. An upward-facing tube eye is wonderfully suited to one particular task: spotting the dark silhouette of something passing overhead, outlined against that last dim trace of light from the surface. It's a specialized tool for a specialized world, an eye that has given up the wide general view we rely on in exchange for being superbly good at one crucial thing. One deep-sea fish, the barrelay, carries this even further, with sensitive tubular eyes housed inside a transparent, dome-like shield on its head, so that it seems to peer up through its own clear forehead at the world above. You don't need to picture it exactly. Just the idea of an eye built entirely for looking up toward the very last of the light and nothing else. There's also the matter of colour, or rather, the lack of it. In the deep, most animals have given up colour vision almost entirely. It makes sense once you think it through. Down where the only sunlight left is blue, and where most of the light that living things produce is also blue, there's simply no point in maintaining the equipment to see reds and greens and yellows that aren't there. So many deep-sea animals see in a single colour, tuned precisely to blue, the one wavelength that still matters at depth. Their eyes have specialized down to the one band of light their world actually contains. Some have gone even further in the other direction, evolving extra copies of the very gene that lets them detect dim light, far more than most animals carry, as if doubling down again and again on the ability to see in the dark. One small deep-sea fish was found to carry an astonishing number of these dim light detectors, far beyond what's typical for a creature with a backbone. It's a quiet kind of superpower, an eye built almost entirely around the idea of catching the faintest possible glimmer. But there's a limit to all of this. Below the twilight, in the true dark of the aphotic zone, even the most sensitive eye in the world has nothing to work with. You can't gather light that isn't there. And so, in those depths, while eyes don't always disappear, other senses rise to take on more of the work. To understand life in the deepest dark, you have to set vision aside for a while and think about all the other ways a body can perceive its surroundings. Let's slow that down and consider what's actually available to an animal in the black. Start with touch, and with something close to it that we don't really have a good everyday word for: the sense of movement in the water itself. Water is a wonderful carrier of motion. When anything moves through it, it pushes the water aside, and that disturbance spreads outward in subtle ripples and pressure changes, traveling through the surrounding sea. Many fish, including those in the deep, have a sensory system running along the sides of their bodies that detects exactly this: faint movements and pressure shifts in the water around them. It's a kind of touch at a distance, a way of feeling something move, nearby without contact and without light. For a creature in the dark, this is invaluable. The approach of prey, the surge of a predator, the swirl left behind by something that passed a moment ago, all of it registers as a pattern of motion against the body. In a sense, these animals can feel the shape of the water moving around them and read the dark through their skin. Think about what that means for a moment. In total blackness, a deep-sea fish may still know that something just moved off to one side, that something larger is approaching from below, that the water ahead is stirring in a particular way. Not by seeing it, by feeling it, through a sensitivity to motion spread across the whole surface of the body. It's a way of perceiving the world that we can barely imagine, because we lean so heavily on our eyes. But in the deep, feeling the water may matter far more than seeing it ever could. Then there's chemical sensing, which is to say smell and taste, though those words don't quite capture how it works underwater. Water carries chemicals beautifully. A scent released anywhere in the sea spreads and drifts on the slow currents, thinning as it goes, but lingering, traveling, sometimes over considerable distances. And many deep-sea animals have a superb sense for detecting these traces, for catching the faint chemical signature of food or of another animal, dissolved in the water and carried to them through the dark. This is exactly how a large fall of food gets found so reliably. When a big carcass settles onto the deep sea floor, it releases its scent into the water, and that scent spreads outward on the currents like an invisible signal flare. Scavengers far off in the darkness catch the trace, faint at first, and turn toward it, following the chemical trail through water they cannot see, homing in across the dark on a meal they could never have spotted with their eyes. In a world where vision often fails, Smell becomes a way of reaching across great distances, a sense that doesn't care whether there's any light at all. Chemical sensing matters for finding one another too, not just for finding food. In the vast emptiness of the deep, where two animals of the same kind might be separated by great stretches of black water, the ability to detect the faint chemical signal of a potential mate and to follow it can be the thread that lets life continue at all. We'll come back to just how extreme that challenge becomes for some deep-sea creatures and the strange solutions they've arrived at a little later. So picture the sensory world of a deep-sea animal now as a whole. Vision, where it exists, is stretched to its limits, tuned to blue, built to catch the faintest glimmer, sometimes pointed upward to read silhouettes against the last of the light, sometimes nearly set aside altogether. And underneath that, doing much of the real work, a rich web of other senses, a feel for the movement and pressure of the water against the body, and a fine sensitivity to the chemicals drifting through the dark. These animals don't experience their world as a black void with nothing in it. They experience it as a place full of information, motion in the water, traces of scent, subtle changes in pressure, just not the kind of information we'd recognize because so little of it comes through the eyes. It's worth holding on to that quietly before we go on. The dark is not emptiness to the creatures who live in it. It's only emptiness to us, because we're built for light. To them, the deep is full of things to sense. They've simply learned to read it through other means. A faint stirring in the water that means something is near. A trace of scent on a slow current that means food. Or a mate somewhere out in the black. A subtle shift in pressure against the skin. Where we would feel only blank, cold nothing, they feel a world, quietly alive with signals, and they move through it with a confidence we could never manage with our eyes alone. It is a different way of being awake to the world, and for them it is enough. It is everything. And yet, with all of these other senses, the deep sea never entirely gave up on light. That might be the most surprising part of all. In a world where the sun never reaches, where you'd think light would be the one thing that simply doesn't apply, light turns out to matter enormously because the animals make it themselves. The ocean's private stars. Imagine the deep sea not as a solid block of darkness, but as a vast dark space scattered with tiny living lights. A faint blue spark here, a slow pulse there, a sudden flash, and then nothing. This is closer to the truth of the deep than the empty blackness we tend to picture. Because down in that lightless world, an astonishing number of creatures make their own light. The phenomenon is called bioluminescence, and it is one of the most widespread and quietly beautiful things in all of nature. Here's the simple version of what it is. Bioluminescence is light produced by a living creature, made through a chemical reaction inside its own body. It isn't reflected light, and it isn't a trick of something glowing from outside. The animal itself is the source. Somewhere in its body, two substances come together, a light-making molecule and a special helper that triggers the reaction. And when they meet, they release energy as light. It's a cool light, not a hot one. Light without fire, light without the sun. The creature is, in the most literal sense, glowing from within, and it's everywhere down there. On land, bioluminescence is a rarity, something we associate with fireflies on a summer evening and little else. But in the ocean, especially in the deep, it's common to a degree that's genuinely hard to grasp. By one widely cited estimate from NOAA, around 80% of the animals living in the open water between roughly 200 and 1,000 meters down are capable of producing light. Other estimates run higher still, with some suggesting that the great majority of open ocean animals below a certain depth can glow, and a long-term study of deep-sea video off the coast of California found that roughly 3 out of every 4 animals observed drifting in the water column had the ability to make light. The exact figure depends on how you count and on where and how you look, but whichever number you trust, they all point to the same astonishing conclusion. In the dark ocean, glowing isn't unusual. Glowing is normal. It may be one of the most common abilities on Earth that most of us have never seen. Let that settle for a moment. The largest living space on the planet is dark, and most of the animals in it can produce their own light. We tend to think of light as belonging to the surface, to the sun, to the day. But there's a strong case to be made that more living things make light in the deep sea than anywhere else in the world. The light itself is almost always blue. There's a reason for that, and it's the same reason the deep water looks blue in the first place. Blue is the color that travels best through seawater. If you're a creature making light in order to be seen or to see by, it makes sense to produce the color that will carry furthest through the water around you. So deep sea bioluminescence is overwhelmingly blue, sometimes shading toward green or violet, and only very rarely anything else. It's a soft, cool, otherworldly light, the kind that seems to belong to the dark rather than to interrupt it. Now, here's a question that turns out to be surprisingly deep. Why do they do it? What is all this light for? And the honest answer, the one the scientists themselves give, is that we don't fully know. That's worth saying plainly, because it's easy to assume that something this widespread must be fully understood, and it isn't. Researchers can describe many of the ways animals appear to use their light, and we'll go through several of them. But the deeper question of why bioluminescence is quite so common, what its main purpose is across all these different creatures, remains genuinely open. It's one of those places where the deep sea reminds us how much we still have to learn. The light is everywhere, and yet its full meaning is still, in part, a mystery. What we can say is that animals seem to use their light for a handful of broad purposes, and these are worth wandering through slowly because each one is its own small marvel. One purpose appears to be finding food, or rather, luring it close. Some predators in the deep carry a glowing light and use it as bait, dangling or displaying a small bright lure in the darkness. To a curious or hungry animal drifting by in the black, that little light might look like a meal, or simply like something worth investigating. And when it comes close to inspect the glow, it finds, too late, that the light belongs to a waiting predator. Light is the trap. In a world where food is scarce and the dark is total, a glowing lure is a way of bringing dinner to you, rather than spending precious energy hunting it down. We'll meet one of the most famous practitioners of this trick before long. Another purpose appears to be defense, and here the creativity of the deep is wonderful. Some animals, when startled or attacked, release a sudden burst of light, a bright flash meant to startle or blind a predator for the instant it takes to escape. Others do something even more striking. They spew a glowing cloud into the water, releasing a shimmering burst of light the way a squid releases ink. The predator is left lunging at a drifting cloud of glow, while the animal that made it slips away into the dark. There's even a defensive strategy that works the other way around, where an animal under attack lights up brightly, as if to make itself more visible, possibly to attract an even larger predator that might come and deal with the first one. A glowing alarm, in effect, a call for help written in light. In the deep, light can be a shield as easily as a beacon. But perhaps the most elegant use of bioluminescence is the quietest one, and it solves a problem we haven't talked about yet. Remember that faint glow that filters down from the surface into the twilight zone? For an animal swimming in that dim blue light, there's a hidden danger. Anything looking up from below sees that animal as a dark silhouette, a shadow blotting out the faint light from above. Even in near darkness, your own shape can give you away to a predator beneath you. And the deep has answered this with one of the most graceful tricks in nature. Some animals produce a gentle glow on their undersides, a soft light pointing downward, carefully tuned to match the faint blue light coming from above. By lighting up their bellies to match the background, they erase their own silhouette. To a predator looking up, the animal seems to vanish, blending seamlessly into the dim glow. No shadow, no shape, nothing to see. This is called counter-illumination, and it's a stunning idea once you grasp it. Hiding not by being dark, but by glowing in exactly the right way. In the deep sea, even invisibility is made of light. And then there's communication, the use of light to send a signal to another of your own kind. In the vast darkness of the deep, where animals of the same species might be scattered far apart, a flash or a pattern of light could be a way of saying, "Here I am," of finding a mate, of recognizing one another across the black. Different patterns, different rhythms, different placements of light on the body. All of these may carry meaning, a quiet language of glow and flash exchanged in a place where no other kind of signal would carry. We can't yet read most of this language, but it seems clear that for some creatures, light is how they reach across the emptiness and find one another. Some animals make their light themselves through their own chemistry, but others have struck a remarkable partnership. There are creatures in the deep that don't produce light on their own at all. Instead, they host colonies of light-making bacteria inside special pockets or organs in their bodies. The bacteria glow, and the animal provides them with a safe home and what they need to live. And in return, the animal gets a light source it could never have made alone. Some of these creatures can even control the glow, opening and closing little shutters of tissue over the bacteria to flash the light on and off, or to dim and brighten it as needed. It's a living lantern, powered by another organism entirely, a tiny ecosystem of light, carried inside the body of its host. We'll see one of the most famous examples of this partnership very soon. So the picture we end up with is this. The deep sea is dark, but it is not without light. It's threaded through with living light, made by the creatures themselves, mostly blue, sometimes flashing, sometimes glowing steadily, used to lure and to startle, to hide and to signal, to find food and to find one another. Most of the animals down there can do it, and while we understand many of its uses, the full reason it's quite so universal remains even now partly a mystery. There may be no better symbol of the deep sea than this. A world that should, by all reason, be utterly black, and which instead quietly sparkles with the light that life insists on making for itself. It's a gentle thing to picture as the mind begins to slow. All that soft blue light, drifting and pulsing in the cold dark, going about its ancient business far below, where almost no human eye has ever watched it. A flash here gone before you could point to it. A steady glow there held by some patient creature for reasons it cannot tell us. A slow blue pulse, rising and fading, somewhere out in the black. And perhaps, closest of all, a single small light drifting up near you out of the dark. Not coming for you, not fleeing you, simply passing close. It holds for a moment, a soft blue spark almost within reach. And then, as quietly as it came, it dims and slips away, back into the black it rose from. None of it for us, none of it asking to be seen. Just the quiet, living light of the deep, sparking and dimming through water that has never known the sun. A kind of silent celebration that has been going on, unwatched, for longer than there have been eyes to watch it. But light is only one of the ways the deep has reshaped the creatures that live there. To survive in that world, an animal needs more than a way to glow, or to sense, or to feed. It needs a body built for the deep itself, for the cold, the scarcity, the crushing weight of all that water overhead. And the bodies the deep sea has produced are unlike anything in the lit world above. At peace with the weight. By now the forces that rule the deep are familiar ones. No sunlight, almost no food, a deep and unending cold, and the vast weight of all that water pressing down from above. The bodies the deep has shaped, over an unimaginable span of time, are answers to those pressures, quite literally. They look strange to us because they're solving problems we never have to face. Let's begin with the weight, because it's the hardest one for us to picture. When you stand on the surface of the earth, there's a whole atmosphere of air resting on top of you, and you never feel it, because your body has always known nothing else. Now imagine replacing that air with water, which is far heavier, and then piling it up, kilometer after kilometer, over your head. As you descend into the ocean, the pressure climbs steadily, growing greater with every increment of depth. Roughly speaking, for every 10 meters you go down, the pressure increases by about the equivalent of one whole atmosphere. By the time you reach the deep ocean, the pressure has become something far beyond anything in our everyday experience, and in the very deepest places, it can reach hundreds of times the pressure we feel at the surface, even approaching 1,000 times in the deepest trenches of all. You don't need to hold those numbers, only the feeling of it. Weight, quietly growing, the deeper down we go. It's tempting to imagine this as a force that would simply crush anything down there flat, and that's the dramatic picture people often carry around. But the reality is gentler and more interesting than that. Pressure is mostly a problem for spaces filled with gas, like the air in a balloon, or the air in human lungs, which is why it's so dangerous for us. A deep-sea animal, by contrast, is made largely of water, and water doesn't compress the way gas does. A body that is mostly water, without large air-filled spaces inside it, can exist under enormous pressure in a kind of balance, the pressure inside matching the pressure outside, so that nothing is being squeezed flat at all. The animal isn't fighting the weight of the ocean, it's simply in equilibrium with it. This is part of why so many deep-sea creatures have soft, watery, gelatinous bodies, with no swim bladders full of gas, no rigid cavities for the pressure to collapse. Their very softness is what lets them live at peace with the crushing depths. Still, pressure isn't entirely harmless, even to a water-filled body. It reaches all the way down to the smallest scales, into the delicate machinery inside an animal's cells. The proteins that do the work of keeping a creature alive are folded into precise shapes, and intense pressure tends to interfere with those shapes, nudging them to unfold or misbehave. So the deep-sea animals have had to solve the problem at that tiny level too, and one of the ways they've done it is rather elegant. Many of them accumulate a particular molecule in their bodies that helps hold their proteins in the correct shape under pressure, acting as a kind of internal stabilizer, a counterweight to the squeeze of the deep. Scientists have found that the amount of this protective molecule tends to increase the deeper an animal lives, as though each creature carries a dose matched to the weight it must endure. It's a quiet, invisible adaptation, happening far below the level we can see, but it's part of what makes life in the deepest water possible at all. And yet, none of this feels like a struggle. It feels more like settling, the body quietly arranging itself to match the weight, until the two are simply the same. Cold works hand in hand with that weight, and it shapes these animals just as deeply. The deep ocean is cold and stays cold, just a few degrees above freezing, year in and year out. Cold slows everything down. Chemical reactions run more sluggishly in the cold, and life, at its heart, is a vast collection of chemical reactions. So in the deep, life simply runs slower. Animals move less. They grow less quickly. Their hearts, where they have them, may beat at a leisurely pace. And this slowness fits perfectly with the other great fact of deep-sea life, the scarcity of food. A slow body is a frugal body. It burns less. It needs less. When your next meal might be days or weeks away, drifting down unpredictably from above, the worst possible strategy would be to live fast and hungry. The deep sea rewards patience, and so it has filled itself with slow, economical creatures, animals that have turned doing very little into a way of staying alive. It's a slower way of being alive, and down here, slow is enough. You can see this economy written all through their bodies. Consider the soft, squishy build we keep returning to. A muscular, heavy, powerfully built body, the kind we admire in a fast-surface fish, is expensive. It takes a great deal of food to build and a great deal of energy to maintain. In a world of plenty, that investment pays off. In the lean dark of the deep, it's a luxury few can afford. So many deep-sea animals are built cheaply, in the best sense, with watery, jelly-like flesh, light frames, and slick skin, bodies that cost little to assemble and little to keep running. What looks to us like flimsiness is actually a finely tuned thrift. These are bodies designed to survive on almost nothing. The same logic reaches even into the bones. In the deepest living fish, the skeleton itself has often become lighter and softer, only partly hardened, not the dense, rigid frame we might expect. Building and carrying a heavy skeleton takes resources and energy, and in the deep, both are precious. A lighter, softer skeleton is cheaper to grow, and it has another quiet advantage. A less rigid body has fewer hard, brittle structures for the pressure to strain. So in the very deepest reaches, you find fish whose bones are thin and incompletely formed, whose flesh is soft and translucent, whose whole bodies seem almost half-finished by the standards of the surface, when in fact they are exquisitely well suited to where they live. They have shed everything they don't strictly need. Color too tends to fall away, because in the dark, what would be the point of it? Many deep-sea animals are pale or translucent, or so deeply dark as to be nearly invisible. Some are a ghostly white or transparent, having let go of pigment entirely, since there's no light to display color to anyway. Others go the opposite direction and become intensely, profoundly black, a black so complete that it absorbs nearly all the light that touches it. That extreme darkness is its own kind of camouflage. In a world lit only by the occasional living glow, an ultra-black body reflects almost nothing back, so that even when a flash of bioluminescence sweeps across it, the animal stays hidden, swallowing the light rather than betraying its shape. To be perfectly black in the deep is to be very hard to see, even by the light of other creatures. There's no fight in any of this, only a slow, patient fitting of body to world. Hold all of it together for a moment, the whole logic of a deep-sea body. It's soft, to live in balance with the pressure rather than fighting it. It's watery and lightly built, to cost as little as possible to make and maintain. Its bones, if it has them, are thin and yielding. Its proteins carry tiny stabilizers to hold their shape against the weight of the sea. It runs slow and cold and frugal, conserving energy against the long stretches between meals. And its color has either drained away to pale transparency or deepened to an all-consuming black, because in the dark, ordinary color serves no purpose. Every feature points back to the same handful of pressures: no light, little food, deep cold, and enormous weight, and answers them with a kind of stripped-down, patient economy. There's something almost peaceful in that, when you sit with it. These are not frantic animals. They're not built for the chase and the struggle we associate with life in brighter places. They're built for endurance, for stillness, for getting by gently on very little, for existing in equilibrium with a world that would seem, to us, impossibly harsh. The deep sea doesn't reward the fast and the strong. It rewards the calm and the spare. And over a span of time we can barely conceive, it has filled its darkness with creatures perfectly shaped to that quiet, demanding logic. There may be a kind of comfort in that thought too, as you lie here. So much of the brighter world runs on hurry, on effort, on doing more and moving faster. The deep asks the opposite. Down there, the creatures that last are the ones that have learned to want little, to spend little, to rest in the stillness and let the world come to them. They are not lazy and they are not failing. They are simply matched to where they are, calm and slow and entirely at home in it. And there is a wisdom in that match, an old, patient wisdom that has nothing at all to prove. And every so often, out in that dark, the small light returns. It drifts up close again, the way it did before, a soft blue spark in no hurry at all. For just a moment, it catches the edge of one of these creatures, the faint gleam of soft, translucent flesh, or a body so deeply black the spark seems to vanish against it. Then the light dims and slips away, and the body it touched is folded back into the dark, as though it had never been there at all. But describing the logic of these bodies is one thing. Seeing what that logic actually produces is another. Because when you follow these principles to their conclusions, soft flesh, thrifty energy, strange senses, living light, you arrive at animals that look genuinely unlike anything in the world above. Creatures with enormous mouths and tiny bodies. Fish that wear glowing lures on slender stalks. Giants drifting in the dark beside creatures almost too small to see. Forms that seem, at first glance, almost invented. And yet each one makes perfect sense once you understand the world it answers to. This has been the body. We haven't yet met the creature wearing it, as strange as it needs to be. So let's go and meet some of them, gently. Not to be startled, but to admire. Because once you understand the world these creatures answer to, the cold, the dark, the scarcity, the weight, their strangeness stops looking like strangeness and starts looking like elegance. Every odd feature is a solution. Every unusual shape is an answer to a question the deep has been asking for a very long time. Begin with the anglerfish, perhaps the most famous resident of the dark, and a creature that brings together so many of the threads we've been following. Picture a roundish, soft-bodied fish, often not very large at all, drifting quietly in the black. And rising from its head on a slender stalk is a small glowing lure, a little lantern held out in front of its mouth. That light is bioluminescent, and in many anglerfish it isn't made by the fish itself, but by colonies of light-producing bacteria living inside the lure. The living lantern partnership we talked about earlier, made real. The fish provides the bacteria a home, the bacteria provide the fish a light, and the purpose of that light is quiet and simple. The anglerfish doesn't chase its food through the dark. That would cost far too much energy in a world this lean. Instead, it waits, holding its glowing lure out in the blackness, and lets the light do the work. To a small creature drifting by, that gentle glow might look like a meal, or simply like something curious worth approaching. And when it comes close to investigate, the anglerfish strikes, its large mouth opening to take in prey that came willingly, drawn by a light it mistook for safety. Its hunting reimagined for a world of scarcity, not pursuit, but invitation. The light is the fishing line, and the anglerfish is endlessly, motionlessly patient. There's more to the anglerfish that fits the deep so well. Many have skin so dark it's nearly the ultimate black, that light-swallowing camouflage that keeps them hidden even when bioluminescence flickers nearby, so that the only thing visible is the glowing lure, and the still body behind it stays invisible. And then there's the strangest chapter of the anglerfish story, which has to do with the oldest problem in the deep. How do you ever find another of your own kind in all that emptiness? For some anglerfish, the answer is extraordinary. In a number of species, the females are the large fish we picture, the ones with the lures. The males are something else entirely, tiny by comparison, sometimes just a small fraction of the female's size. These little males don't hunt. Instead, they spend their lives searching, guided by a powerful sense of smell, following the faint chemical trace of a female through the dark. And in some species, when a male finally finds a female, he does not simply mate and depart. He attaches himself to her body, permanently fusing to her, so that the two become joined for the rest of their lives. It's one of the more remarkable solutions in all of nature to the problem of loneliness in a vast, dark sea. Though it's worth remembering this happens only in some anglerfish, not all of them. In a world where two animals of the same kind might almost never meet, this is one way of making sure that once you've found each other, you never have to search again. Sit with that for a moment, gently. The deep is so empty, so dark, so spread out, that finding a partner is itself a triumph of survival. And evolution has answered that emptiness in its own strange, resourceful way. Think of how much dark water lies between any two of these creatures, how little light, how few signs to follow. And yet, across all of that, a tiny male, smaller than you might believe, sets out and searches, and against the odds, finds the one he was looking for. There is something almost tender in it, beneath the strangeness. In a world built for solitude, the deep still finds its ways of bringing life together. Not far from the anglerfish, in spirit, are the dragonfish, another of the deep's accomplished predators. A dragonfish tends to have a dark, slender body, rows of light-producing organs along its sides, and a glowing lure of its own, often dangling from a barbel beneath its chin. Some dragonfish carry an additional, near-secret talent that we touched on earlier. There's good evidence that certain of them can produce and perceive red light, a color almost nothing else in the deep can see. If that holds true, it would give them something, like a private channel, a way to illuminate prey, or signal to one another in a light invisible to the very creatures around them. We should be careful here. This is one of the more specialized and still studied abilities of the deep, not a settled certainty for every dragonfish. But picture it for a moment, if it's true. A hunter drifting through the black switches on a deep red glow, and that glow falls across a small creature ahead of it like a spotlight no one else can see. The prey is lit up, fully revealed, and never knows it, because to its own eyes nothing has changed at all. The dragonfish moves in through a window of light that it alone can look through. A hunter carrying its own private color through a world that cannot see it. Now let's shift our sense of scale entirely, because the deep is not only home to these famous hunters, it's filled, far more than we tend to imagine, with the small and the gelatinous and the quietly abundant. The twilight and dark zones swarm with drifting jellies, comb jellies, and their many soft-bodied relatives, creatures made almost entirely of water, pulsing slowly through the black. These are easy to overlook because they're delicate and faint and not at all dramatic, but they may be among the most successful and numerous animals in the entire ocean. Many of them glow. Many drift slowly, expending almost no energy, feeding on the marine snow and tiny particles around them. They embody the deep sea principles we've discussed almost perfectly: soft, watery, frugal, slow, patient. They are not built to impress us. They're built to endure, and they do, in vast numbers, throughout the dark. And the twilight zone above them belongs here too. That same staggering crowd of small fish we drifted through on the way down. Most are small, many glowing with their own rows of light, rising toward the surface under the cover of night to feed, then sinking back into the gloom by day. We rarely see them. They live their whole quiet lives in the dimness between worlds, and together they may be one of the largest gatherings of animal life anywhere on the planet, hidden in plain sight beneath the waves. So the deep holds both ends of the spectrum at once. There are the large and the striking, fish with enormous mouths and glowing lures, animals that have become almost emblems of the deep. And there are the small and the soft and the countless, the drifting jellies and tiny lantern-bearing fish that actually make up most of the living mass down there. The giants are memorable, but the multitudes are the true fabric of the deep. It's a world built far more out of the small and the gentle than out of the large and the fearsome. What unites all of them across every size is that each is a careful answer to the same set of conditions. The huge mouth of a deep-sea predator makes sense when meals are so rare that you must be able to swallow nearly anything you're lucky enough to encounter, even something larger than yourself. The soft, watery body makes sense under pressure and scarcity. The glowing lure makes sense in the dark. The tiny, searching male makes sense in the emptiness. The slow, drifting, energy-sipping life of a jelly makes sense where food is faint. None of these creatures is strange, really. Each is exactly as strange as it needs to be, and no stranger. They look invented to us only because we're visitors from a world with different rules. And here's a humbling thought to rest on for a moment. Even now, we've only glimpsed a small fraction of these animals. The creatures we've come to know best, like the anglerfish, have been seen alive in their own world only a handful of times, even after decades of patient exploration with deep-diving robots. Each encounter tends to raise new questions rather than settle old ones. There are almost certainly many forms down there we've never laid eyes on at all, drifting in the dark, perfectly adapted, entirely unaware of us, as we remain largely unaware of them. The deep is not finished surprising us. In all likelihood, it has barely begun. So far, every creature we've met survives, in the end, on the sun, even if only at a great distance, even if only through the slow marine snow drifting down from the sunlit world far overhead. The whole dark food web we've explored hangs from that thin thread of light far above. Pull on any of it, the anglerfish, the dragonfish, the drifting jellies, the lanternfish of the twilight, and you eventually arrive back at sunlight, repackaged and sent down into the depths. But there are places in the deep where that thread is cut entirely. Let the view sink lower for a moment, down past the drifting jellies and the lanternfish, down to the floor of the deep ocean itself, far from any falling snow. In most places, that floor is quiet, cold, and still, exactly as you'd expect. But in a few rare spots, it isn't quiet at all. Warmth rises there from somewhere deep within the earth. Mineral-rich water seeps and billows up out of the rock, clouding the dark. And gathered around it, crowded close in the cold and the black, is life, thick and thriving, in a place the sun has never touched in any form. These are places where life does not depend on the sun at all, not even second-hand, not even through the slow snow drifting down from above. Places where, against everything we once believed possible, whole living communities are powered by the chemistry of the earth itself, in the total absence of light. When these places were first found, far down in the dark, they quietly changed what we believed was possible, and where we thought life could ever take hold. Warm oases in the dark. For a long time, the assumption ran something like this: all life needs the sun. Even the creatures of the dark depend on sunlight in the end, through that slow fall of marine snow drifting down from the lit surface far above. Cut off the sun entirely, with no light and no falling food, and life would simply have nothing to run on. The deep sea floor, far from any sunlight, was imagined as one of the most barren places on Earth, a cold, dark, empty plain, where only a sparse scattering of scavengers picked over whatever happened to sink down to them. Then, in 1977, that picture broke apart. a team of scientists was exploring a stretch of the deep sea floor along a volcanic ridge in a place where the Earth's crust pulls slowly apart and heat rises from below. They had instruments suggesting there might be warm water down there, and they descended in a small submersible to see for themselves. What they expected was geology, interesting rocks, warm springs on the seafloor, the physical processes of a restless planet. What they were not expecting was life. The expedition had not even brought a biologist along, because no one imagined there would be anything living down there to study. And then the lights of the submersible swept across the seafloor, and there, in the cold and the total dark, far below the reach of the sun, was an oasis. Clustered around cracks in the seafloor where warm, shimmering water rose up out of the earth were dense communities of living things, in numbers and sizes no one had imagined possible down there. Not a sparse scattering, not a few hardy stragglers, a teeming, thriving gathering of life packed around these warm seeps in the middle of what was supposed to be a barren plain. It was, by all accounts, astonishing to witness. A garden of life, in the last place anyone thought to look for one. These places came to be called hydrothermal vents, and what they actually are is worth sitting with for a moment, slowly, because the explanation is part of the wonder. In certain regions of the deep sea floor, especially along the great ridges where the planet's crust is spreading apart, seawater seeps down into cracks in the rock, makes its way deep toward the heat of the Earth's interior, and is warmed, sometimes intensely. As it heats, it dissolves minerals out of the surrounding rock, becoming a hot, chemical-rich fluid, and then it rises back up and gushes out through openings in the seafloor, a warm, mineral-laden flow pouring up into the cold, dark water of the deep. That's a hydrothermal vent, a place where the inside of the planet meets the bottom of the ocean, and warm, chemically loaded water flows out into the black. Now here is the crucial thing, the part that overturned the old assumption. The water rising from these vents carries dissolved chemicals, and among them are substances rich in chemical energy, including a compound that smells, to us, like rotten eggs. To most life, these chemicals are useless or even poisonous, but certain microbes have a remarkable ability. They can take the chemical energy locked in these vent compounds and use it to build food, to make the sugars and organic matter that life is built from, without any sunlight at all. This process is called chemosynthesis, and it's the quiet miracle at the heart of the whole vent community. It helps to set it beside the process we know. On the surface, plants and plant-like organisms perform photosynthesis. They take the energy of sunlight and use it to build food out of simple ingredients. That captured sunlight becomes the foundation of nearly every food web in the lit world. Chemosynthesis does almost exactly the same job, but it swaps the energy source. Instead of drawing energy from light, these microbes draw it from chemistry, from the energy-rich compounds in the vent fluid. The result is the same simple ingredients become food. Food becomes the base of a whole community, but the sun has been removed from the equation entirely. Here, in the deep dark, life has found a way to feed itself directly from the energy of the earth. Let that settle, because it's a genuinely profound idea. Every ecosystem we'd ever known was built, at its base, on sunlight. The hydrothermal vents revealed an entire kind of life that isn't. Communities that run on chemical energy welling up from inside the planet, in complete and permanent darkness, wholly independent of the sun. It meant that life could exist in places, and perhaps in ways we'd never seriously considered. It reshaped our sense of where life might be possible, not only in the deep sea, but anywhere chemical energy and water might come together, even far beyond the Earth. That's a large part of why this discovery mattered so much. It didn't just add a new habitat to the map, it widened our whole sense of what life is allowed to do. Around these vents, then, gather the most surprising communities in the entire ocean, all of them resting ultimately on those chemosynthetic microbes. The microbes are the foundation, the equivalent of the grass and the green leaves of the surface world. Some of them drift and grow freely in mats and clouds and are grazed upon by larger animals, but others have entered into one of the most intimate partnerships in nature, and it produced one of the vent's most iconic residents. Picture a tall, slender tube fixed to the seafloor, with a soft crimson plume emerging from the top, swaying quietly in the warm vent water. These are giant tube worms, and they can grow to remarkable lengths, some reaching around 2 meters, standing in great clustered forests around the warmth of the vents. And here is the astonishing part. A giant tube worm has no mouth and no stomach. It cannot eat in any ordinary sense at all. So how does it live? It lives by partnership. Inside the body of the tube worm dwell vast colonies of chemosynthetic bacteria. The worm gathers the raw ingredients those bacteria need, the chemicals from the vent water, and delivers them inward. The bacteria, in turn, use chemosynthesis to produce food, and that food nourishes the worm. The red plume we can see is rich with blood, and it's the worm's way of absorbing what its internal partners require from the surrounding water. The worm has effectively become a living home and garden for the microbes that feed it. Neither could do it alone. Together, they thrive in a place with no light and no falling food, drawing their entire living from the chemistry of the deep. It's one of the closest and strangest partnerships in all of nature, and it sits at the heart of the vent world. And the tube worms are only the most famous of the vent dwellers. Around these warm oases cluster all manner of life, clams and mussels of unusual size, ghostly crabs, shrimp, and many others, gathered into a dense community in the middle of the cold, dark plain, all of it sustained directly or indirectly by those chemical-feeding microbes. Since that first discovery, scientists exploring vents across the world's oceans have found hundreds of species that had never been seen before, creatures found nowhere else, living their whole lives clustered around these flickering warm seeps in the deep. Each vent is a kind of island of life in the darkness, rich and crowded, utterly unlike the sparse plain around it. Picture it once more, slowly, before we move on. The wide, cold, empty floor of the deep, dark and still in every direction. And then, somewhere in all that emptiness, a glow of warmth rising from the rock, and gathered around it a crowded living garden, forest of red-plumed worms swaying in the shimmer, pale crabs moving among them, the water trembling with heat in the midst of all that cold. An oasis, in the truest sense, life pressed, close around the one place that offers it what it needs, while the dark plain stretches away unbroken on every side. There are many of these scattered across the deep sea floor, each one its own small, warm, crowded world, each one quietly thriving on the chemistry of the earth, with the sun nowhere in the story at all. It's worth noting too that chemosynthesis isn't confined to the vents alone. Scientists have since found that this same kind of life, fueled by chemistry rather than light, also gathers at other places in the deep, at cold seeps where chemical-rich fluids leak more softly from the seafloor, and even around the fallen bodies of large animals as they break down. Wherever the right chemical energy is available in the dark, life seems to find a way to make a living from it. The vents were the dramatic first discovery, but they opened a window onto something broader, a whole hidden mode of life, running quietly on the energy of the earth, scattered across the dark floor of the sea. So we've now seen the two great engines of the deep laid side by side. There's the long, slow thread of sunlight, captured at the surface and sent drifting down as marine snow to feed most of the dark ocean. And there's this other thing entirely, these chemical oases, where life needs no sunlight at all, where the planet itself provides. Two completely different answers to the same ancient question of how to live in the dark. It's a quiet reminder that life is far more inventive and far more stubborn than we once believed. But even the vents, remarkable as they are, sit within the broader deep, and the deep keeps going down. Below the plains and the ridges and the warm clustered gardens of the vents lie the very deepest places of all, the great trenches that plunge far beyond even the abyss, where the water is coldest, the dark is oldest, and the pressure becomes almost beyond comprehension. And astonishingly, even there, at the absolute extremes, life persists. There is still further down to go, and the deepest places of all keep their own kind of quiet, waiting at the very bottom of the world. At the bottom of the world, we've already come a very long way down, past the sunlit surface, through the blue twilight, into the permanent dark of the midnight zone, down across the cold abyssal plains where the marine snow settles and the vents flicker in the black. But even there we are not yet at the bottom. Below the great open plains of the deep lie the trenches, narrow chasms that plunge far below the surrounding sea floor, dropping down and down into the very deepest reaches of the sea. This deepest realm has its own name. It's called the Hadal Zone, after Hades, the old name for the underworld, the deepest reaches of the ocean, extending from around 6,000 meters down to nearly 11,000 meters, at the very bottom of the deepest trenches of all. It's worth pausing to take in just how far down that is. The deepest trenches descend to depths so great that the tallest mountains on Earth could be lowered into them and vanish completely beneath the surface, with water still to spare overhead. These are the lowest places on the planet, farther from the sky than almost anywhere a person has ever been. And they are, as you'd expect by now, utterly dark, bitterly cold, and almost completely cut off, scattered, isolated gashes in the seafloor, each one its own remote world. And the defining fact of the Hadal Zone, the thing that makes it so extreme even by the standards of the deep, is the pressure. We talked earlier about how pressure grows with depth, climbing steadily the further down you go. In the Hadal trenches, it reaches almost unimaginable levels. At the very bottom of the deepest trenches, the weight of the water overhead presses down with something on the order of 1,000 times the pressure we feel at the surface. Crushing weight, near freezing cold, total darkness, and almost no food at all, since these deep trenches lie so far below everything else that only the faintest trickle of marine snow ever reaches them. there is little light here either, even of the living kind. The glowing creatures that fill the water far above grow scarce in the trenches, and the small drifting spark that kept us company through the dark of the midnight zone belongs to gentler depths than this. Down here, near the very bottom, the dark is nearly complete. By every reasonable expectation, this should be where life finally gives up, and yet, remarkably, it doesn't. Even here, in the deepest, coldest, most crushing water on the planet, there is life. The animals best known for living at these extreme depths are the snailfish, small, soft, and unassuming creatures that have pushed the boundaries of where backbone-bearing animals can survive. In fact, fish are the only animals with backbones known to live in the Hadal zone at all, and snailfish are among the deepest dwelling of them, recorded living at depths of around 8,000 meters, far down in the great trenches. They are not fearsome to look at. Quite the opposite. A deep trench snailfish tends to be small, pale, and faintly translucent, almost delicate in appearance, with a soft, tadpole-like body. There is nothing about them that looks built for one of the harshest places on Earth. And yet, they are, exquisitely so. Look a little closer at how they manage it, because the snailfish gathers together so many of the principles we've been following all along. Start with the body. A deep trench snailfish has soft, only partly hardened bones, a skeleton that is thin and incompletely formed by the standards of a surface fish. We've seen why this matters. A rigid, heavily mineralized skeleton would be both expensive to build in a place with almost no food, and more vulnerable to the strains of extreme pressure. A soft, pliable body, by contrast, sits in balance with the crushing weight around it, rather than fighting it, and costs far less to maintain. The snailfish's skin is transparent and unpigmented, because there is no light down there to require color, and its flesh is soft and watery throughout. Everything about its build follows the deep-sea logic of softness, economy, and equilibrium, carried to one of its furthest extremes. Then there's the invisible adaptation, the one happening at the scale of the snailfish's own cells. We mentioned earlier that intense pressure tends to interfere with the delicate folded shapes of the proteins that keep an animal alive, and that deep-sea creatures accumulate a special protective molecule to help hold those proteins steady. The snailfish does exactly this, and it does it in abundance. Its body is rich with that stabilizing molecule, the substance that acts as a kind of internal counterweight to the pressure, helping its cellular machinery keep working under a weight that would disrupt the chemistry of most other life. And consistent with what scientists have found more broadly, the amount of this protective molecule tends to be greater the deeper the animal lives, as though each creature is dosed precisely to the depth it calls home. It's a quiet, molecular kind of armor, invisible and essential. Scientists who have studied the genetics of these deep trench snailfish have found further hints of how they cope. There are signs that they carry extra copies of genes involved in repairing damage to their genetic material, which researchers think may help them maintain the integrity of their cells under the strain of such high pressure. We should hold this gently, as a promising finding rather than a closed case, the kind of thing that suggests a mechanism rather than proves one beyond doubt. But it fits the larger pattern beautifully, a body adapted at every level, from its soft bones down to the molecules inside its cells, all of it tuned to survive where almost nothing else can. And there's one more answer, the simplest of all, written not into the snailfish's bones or cells, but into the way it lives. It does almost nothing. It drifts more than it swims, moving slowly and rarely, holding still in the dark and spending as little energy as a body can spend and still remain alive. Where food is this scarce, stillness itself becomes a strategy. The snailfish doesn't race through its world or struggle against it. It waits, patient and unhurried, for the little that comes, and that quiet economy of motion may be the deepest adaptation of all. And the snailfish are not alone down there. The Hadal trenches are also home to swarms of small scavenging creatures, shrimp-like animals that gather wherever a scrap of food arrives, descending on it in numbers, making the most of the rare windfalls that sink all the way to the bottom. These little scavengers are, in their way, just as impressive as the fish, thriving in the deepest water on Earth, sustained by the thinnest trickle of food, perfectly at home in conditions that would seem to allow no home at all. The deepest trenches, far from being lifeless, turn out to have their own small specialized communities, their own quiet economies of survival, running on almost nothing in the dark, under the greatest weight the ocean can bring to bear. It's worth sitting with what this really means. We have now followed life all the way down, from the bright surface to the very bottom of the deepest trenches, and at no point has it given out. Not in the cold, not in the dark, not under the marine snow's thin and uncertain rain, not even under 1,000 atmospheres of pressure in the Hadal Deep. Everywhere we have looked, in every layer, life has found some way to hold on, to feed, to sense, to endure. The deep sea is not a place where life merely clings to a few marginal footholds. It's a place that life has filled, top to bottom, with patient, ingenious, beautifully adapted creatures, each one shaped to the precise conditions of its own depth. There's something genuinely moving in that, as the mind drifts and slows. Life is so much more stubborn and so much more inventive than we tend to assume. Given almost nothing, no light, little food, brutal cold, enormous weight, it does not simply surrender. It adapts. It softens its bones, dims its colors, slows its heart, stabilizes its very molecules, and goes on living quietly in the last places we would ever expect to find it. The deepest trench in the ocean is, by any measure, one of the most hostile environments on the planet. And even there, small pale fish drift through the dark, perfectly at peace with a world that should, by all reason, be impossible for them. Let that thought rest in you for a moment. The very deepest place in all the world, the bottom of the lowest trench, farther down than mountains, are tall, colder and darker and heavier than anywhere else there is. And it is not empty. A small, soft, pale fish is moving through it, slowly, unhurried, as it has every reason to be, because that crushing dark is simply its home. It is not enduring its world the way we imagine enduring something terrible. It is just living calmly where it belongs. Nothing about it is straining. Nothing about it is afraid. It is exactly where it is meant to be, and it is at peace there, in the deepest dark on earth. And yet, for everything we've learned, for all the wonders we've drifted past tonight, the deep sea remains, in the most genuine sense, mostly unknown to us. We have glimpsed it. We have lowered our instruments and our cameras and our small submersibles into a tiny fraction of it, and we've come back with marvels. But the great majority of the deep has never been seen by human eyes at all. For every creature we've come to know, there are almost certainly many more drifting in the dark, unobserved, undescribed, going about their ancient lives entirely beyond our knowledge. The unfinished map. So as we begin, gently, to drift back up toward the surface and the end of our journey, let's sit for a while with the strangest truth of all about the deep sea. For everything we've learned tonight, for every creature we've drifted past, the deep ocean remains even now mostly unknown to us. Almost all of it has never been seen. That's a difficult thing to take in, because we live in an age that feels thoroughly mapped. We can call up an image of nearly any street in the world. We've sent machines to the surface of distant planets and photographed the rings of worlds far across the solar system. It would be reasonable to assume that our own ocean, right here beneath us, must surely be well known by now, and yet it isn't. The deep sea is, by a wide margin, the least explored place on Earth, and it sits not light years away, but just below the waves of our own planet. Put it plainly for a moment, because the scale of what we don't know is genuinely humbling. The entire seafloor has been roughly sketched from above, in a broad, low detail way, enough to know its general shape, but mapping it in real detail, the kind of careful, high-resolution mapping that actually shows what's down there, is a far larger task, and we've only managed it for a portion of the seafloor. As of recently, only somewhere around 1/4 to 1/3 of the global seafloor had been mapped in that kind of detail. The rest remains, in a meaningful sense, blank. And mapping, remember, is only the first step. To map the seafloor is simply to learn its shape, the contours of the hills and plains and trenches below. It is not the same as actually going there, seeing it, exploring it with our own eyes or our instruments. And by that measure, the measure of what we've truly visited and observed in the deep, the numbers become almost vanishingly small. Of the deep sea floor, the vast dark floor of the world's ocean, human beings have directly seen only the tiniest sliver, a fraction so small it's hard to hold in the mind, a patch that, set against the whole, amounts to almost nothing at all. The overwhelming majority of the deep sea, the largest living space on the planet, has never been observed by anyone. Let that settle for a moment without alarm. It isn't a frightening thought. It's an extraordinary one. It means that the world is far from finished revealing itself. It means that out there, right now, beneath the surface of the very ocean we know, lie immense stretches of dark water and dark sea floor that no one has ever laid eyes on, full of who knows what, going about their quiet business as they have for ages, entirely beyond our knowledge. In an age that can feel as though everything has already been discovered, the deep sea is a standing reminder that the greatest part of our own planet is still genuinely unexplored. And this is not for lack of trying. It's because the deep is so profoundly difficult to reach. Everything that makes it so hostile to life makes it hostile to us as well, and far more so. The pressure that the snailfish stabilizes its very molecules to endure would crush our machines if they weren't built with enormous care. The darkness that the anglerfish lights with its lure means we must carry every bit of light down with us. The cold, the distance, the sheer volume of water to be crossed, all of it makes exploring the deep slow, costly and painstaking. We've sent remarkable vehicles down, robotic explorers trailing cables, small submersibles, drifting cameras, and they've shown us wonders. but each one can only ever illuminate a tiny circle of the dark at a time. Exploring the deep sea with these tools is a little like trying to understand a vast, darkened continent by walking through it at night with a single small flashlight. You see what the beam falls on, beautifully, vividly, and everything beyond it remains in shadow, which means that nearly everything we've talked about tonight, every creature, every adaptation, every glowing light and chemical garden and soft-boned fish, we know about because of what that small flashlight has happened to fall upon. And if the parts we've seen are this strange and this rich, it's worth wondering, gently, what waits in all the dark we haven't, because new creatures are still being found, constantly. This isn't a finished science, a closed book of catalogued animals. Nearly every serious expedition into the deep tends to turn up something never seen before. A new kind of animal, a new behavior, a new way of making a living in the dark. We talked earlier about the gardens of life around the hydrothermal vents. Since those were first discovered, hundreds of species entirely new to science have been found clustered around them. And that pattern holds across the deep more broadly. Even the creatures we consider famous, like the anglerfish, have been seen alive in their own world only a handful of times, despite decades of searching. Each glimpse is precious and rare. Each one tends to raise as many questions as it answers. So there are real and open mysteries down there, things we genuinely do not yet understand. We've met some of them tonight, quietly, along the way. We don't fully know why bioluminescence is so astonishingly common, what its deepest purpose is, across so many unrelated creatures, why life in the dark has reached again and again for the making of light. We don't know how many species the deep sea actually holds. The true number is simply beyond us at present, almost certainly far larger than what we've named. We're still working to understand exactly how the deepest animals endure the pressure, how their cells and their genes hold together under that weight. And there are surely whole questions we haven't even thought to ask yet, because we haven't yet seen the things that would prompt them. The deep sea isn't only full of answers we've gathered, it's full of questions we haven't reached. It would be easy to find that unsettling, all that darkness, all that unknown so close beneath us. But there's another way to hold it, a gentler way, and it might be the truer one. The deep sea doesn't need us to know it in order to go on. It never has. Long before anyone descended into it, long before there was anyone to descend at all, the marine snow was already falling, slow and soft, through the dark. The anglerfish was already holding out its patient light. The tube worms were already swaying in the warm flow of the vents. The small pale fish were already drifting through the deepest trenches, entirely at peace with a world we would call impossible. All of it was happening, quietly, completely, with no one watching. And all of it is happening still, right now, as you rest here, far above it. There's a deep calm in that, if you let yourself feel it. Somewhere below the surface of the sea tonight, in water that has never known a single ray of sunlight, life is simply continuing, not struggling, not racing, not afraid, just continuing in the slow, unhurried way the deep has always done things. A flake of marine snow drifts softly downward through the black, taking its long, quiet journey toward the floor. A soft-bodied creature pulses slowly through the dark, sipping its small share of energy in no hurry at all. A faint blue light blooms somewhere in the distance, glows for a moment, and fades, and the great cold stillness holds all of it, steady and constant, as it has for ages beyond counting. You can let your breathing slow to match it if you like. The long, easy fall of the snow, the slow pulse of something drifting by, the gentle bloom and fade of a distant light. There is no effort anywhere in it. Nothing down there is trying. Nothing is hurrying toward anything. The whole vast dark simply rests in its own slow rhythm, and you can rest in it too, letting each breath grow a little longer, a little softer, sinking gently the way everything sinks, in the end, into the quiet of the deep. We don't need to understand every part of it. We don't need to have seen it, or mapped it, or named all its creatures for it to be real and whole and quietly going on. The deep sea has never required an audience. It simply is, vast and dark and full of patient life, the largest living space on our planet, carrying on in perfect peace far below everything we know. And so, as our slow journey comes to its end, we can let the deep be exactly what it is, a dark, cold, gentle world, scattered with living lights, where strange and lovely creatures drift through the black, feeding on the slow rain from above, or on the chemistry of the earth itself, asking nothing, needing nothing from us, enduring quietly through depths we can scarcely imagine. Let your mind settle there, in that calm and lightless place. There is no rush in it. There is nothing to fear in it. There is only the slow drift of snow through dark water, the soft pulse of unhurried life, the steady cold, and the quiet, faithful glow of creatures who have learned, over an unimaginable span of time, to live and thrive entirely in the dark. And perhaps, one last time, the small light comes, the one that drifted close all through tonight's journey, that lured nothing and signaled to no one, that only ever passed near and moved on. It rises softly out of the dark, a faint blue spark, and this time it doesn't hurry away. It stays a moment, close and quiet, the way something stays when it knows you are nearly asleep. And then, gently, it dims and lets you go, drifting back down into the deep it came from. Not lost, just home. Far below, the deep goes on, as it always has, and as it always will. Tonight's story is done, and you can rest now, knowing it is there, quietly continuing in the gentle, enduring darkness of the sea.